Phil? Hey, Phil? Phil Connors? Phil Connors, I thought that was you.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for watching.
Hey. Now, don't you tell me you don't remember me, because I sure as heck fire remember you.
Not a chance.
Ned Ryerson!
I don't know how I came across your podcast. We're starting, so I'll just, it's that casual. But I don't know how I'm not sure where I came across it originally, but I put it on, and I have to say, and I've seen your work, I've seen you in movies and countless episodics, of course, over the years. I mean, but I did not know what I think is maybe the primary persona or primary role that you really have, which is storyteller, you know?
Yeah, that I don't know if you know the story of the podcast, but I had just come off of some catastrophes, a series of catastrophes. I'd broken my neck. Riding on a horse on the side of an active volcano in Iceland. For real. Like, what could have possibly gone wrong? And so, we got hit by a giant wind off the Atlantic, and it lifted me and the horse off the ground, carried us, threw us down. The horse landed on its feet. And started running. And I remember then the world coming at me very fast. And then at some point, my wife says, I slid to the side of the horse. And I remember the world coming at me from the side.
Right.
And I fell. Somewhere on the side of the mountain I fell. And apparently, this is Mount Hekla. This is the one that just exploded in Iceland. The volcano that just went.
Yes.
So they called down to the woman doctor somewhere at the bottom of the mountain. Apparently, she came up. At this point, I was unconscious. Then they get me to an ambulance, and they take me to Reykjavik. At this point, I'm still unconscious. And I remember being in the ambulance saying to Anne, where am I? Where am I? Am I all right? And she starts crying. And I said, why are you crying? And she said, you've been saying, where am I, for the last hour. These are the first words you've spoken in hours that are a conversation. Relief. Yeah. So anyway, I come home and I'm very depressed because I feel like, okay, I'm alive. That's great. But I obviously can't act. I was lucky that I was still able to walk and move and all that kind of stuff. And that's when David Chen, this podcaster in Seattle, called me up on the phone, and he had seen the movie Robert Brinkman did with me called Stephen Tobolowsky's Birthday Party, where I tell stories from morning to night finish at this birthday. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which I watched.
That's the movie. Something like that, yeah. And David saw that. He said, would you like to do a podcast? And I didn't know what a podcast was. And he said, well, we'll just do a story a week or however many stories you want to do. And I go something just said, say yes, because there was nothing I could do. So I thought, okay, I almost died. So what I'm going to do is, in this podcast, I will tell only true stories from my life that I would have wanted to know if I had been crippled in that accident and wanted to know about my life and was able to remember these stories from my life. I wanted to tell the true stories of my life that I could remember, from my childhood, teenage years, from when I was sick in my teenage years, to college, to falling in love, to going to Illinois for graduate school. God knows I didn't need that, but I met the greatest acting teacher in the world, Ed K. Martin, there, who changed my life. And he was also Holly Hunter's coach, too.
Oh.
Yeah, so Ed was great. And I learned so much from him, and I thought, this was, and then in my journey out to Los Angeles, and then my girlfriend coming out and joining me in Los Angeles, and our true stories, because I hate it when people doctor the stories and make them different than they are, and then they become just false.
Right, and they become false, and then you've been misled, and you've been manipulated, whether that was the intention or not.
Yeah, and for no good reason. For no good reason. And then
yes,
you hear the old stories, and you hear the parts that were boring, and you hear the parts that were exciting, and you go like, sounds like a life to me. You know, a little boring, little exciting, and a lot in the middle that is absolutely a mystery. And that to me kind of is what makes a story. Little boring, little exciting, and a lot of mystery.
But did you develop the storytelling organically, naturally, just figuring it those, like what you just mentioned there? Is this stuff you figured out by telling your enjoyment of telling stories, or did you actually my partner, she and her and another friend of hers actually do run a story slam, kind of, I'll just say the Moth for shorthand, but not really. And it's this community of people up where we are. It's in, like right in the town of Catskill, New York. And it's an amazing monthly experience. Just people open up in ways you'd never, expect, and share things that are, sometimes also funny and not quite so deep, but also the most personal and deep things that you will ever hear from people. And it's incredible. And the really great part of it is the growing part of this audience, which isn't huge by any stretch, but it's younger folks coming every week, month. And it makes sense to me why they would find that appealing, as opposed to sitting on their phones in a coffee shop or at home,
Yeah, it's, I think I want to give some credit. Now that I'm looking back on it, I could give some credit to Tony Graham White, my theater history teacher. He was a great teacher of mine at SMU, and he was a big fan of Aristotle. And he was a big fan of the origin of storytelling. Aristotle came up with the beginning, middle, and end. Before Aristotle, stories didn't have to have a beginning, and they didn't have to have an end. He says in the Poetics, it's better if you start a story, have a development, and finish it. And Act 3 should connect with Act 1. That's what he said. And now we look at that as like, well, yeah, because if you don't do that, it's like really boring. It's really terrible.
Makes little sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you came across this. I mean, you're an amazing storyteller. I mean, having listened to quite a number of your stories, and the craziest thing, and I don't know if I'm sure you've encountered people who've told you this, that they'll put it on in the night and they'll lay down and they'll listen to your voice and they'll fall asleep to it, or they'll wake up to it, and they are mind-blowing experiences to come out of it and hear you mid-emotional at the height of this emotional story where you're, where the acting, I'm sure, muscles come in quite handy in terms of where you're really allowing yourself to get caught up in the telling of it, and you're hearing this, and it's like, wait a minute, I got to go back now, listen to the whole thing, because it's an incredible experience.
I think also one of the things that happened around the time I started writing the stories for the podcast was my mother died, and I went through that experience being with her, and that's one of the early stories, The Alchemist. On the Tobolowsky Files, The Alchemist. And
Thanks for mentioning the name of the podcast.
Yeah, no, the podcast is the Tobolowsky Files, but the story, I think, was the fifth one, maybe. Okay. And The Alchemist was one of the triggers that made me want to write stories, because the death of my mother was so potent to me and to everyone in our family, because we were there with her in the moment, in the hospital. And we heard her final words, and we saw her final gesture to something. I don't know what, but it was mind-blowing. And so it was one of those things where I sat down. Well, who was it who said it? Charles Dickens. I sat down in a white heat and I wrote, and I just wrote, and the story of my mother kind of came out. And then there is the editing. Once you write it all down, then there becomes the editing and trying to create the Act 1, the Act 2, and the Act 3, and putting it together to where it doesn't just ramble. You know, you're not just going from incident to incident. And that was one, and I sent that to David Chen, and he said, let's record this. And we recorded it, but I don't think it was the first one we released. But it was certainly the impetus that got the podcast going.
Right. And wow, it just had, I mean, that's amazing. He just sort of sensed that this would be the right vehicle for you.
Yeah. And we did that film, if you could find it anywhere, The Primary Instinct, which is, the podcast became very big in Seattle because that's where David Chen was operating. I see. So we started the live shows in Seattle at the Neptune Theater, and then I think it was called the Eugene O'Neill. It was a very big theater, and I would go to Seattle like once a year and do 1 or 2 live shows, and we'd fill the place because there were all the fans from the podcast there. And I remember David said, well, let's film one of your shows so we have it. And so he rented, I don't know who rented, I didn't pay money for it, but they rented I want to say the Eugene O'Neill Theater, that may be the wrong name of the theater, but it was over 1,000 seats. And David says, we've got it for 2 nights. So this is great. What we're going to do is night number 1 is just going to be you, empty, no audience, nothing. We're going to have the cameras in the audience. We're going to shoot you. You just play it like there's an audience, and we're going to get the whole show. And you can make mistakes. You do whatever you want. We'll get the whole thing in the can. So the next night when we let the 1,000-some-odd people in, you just enjoy yourself and tell the story, and we'll use whatever we can. So we shot day number 1, all day number 1 in the theater. All went great. I was coming to the theater night number 2 with great expectations of joy. And David said, we have a problem. The shirt you were wearing was strobing on the camera, so we can't use any of the footage from yesterday. We need new wardrobe, and you need to do the whole thing. And now we only have 1 take to get everything. And so we shot that, The Primary Instinct. And it's 1 take, 1 print of certainly Act 1 of that show. And I just did the Turner Classics cruise. I was one of the actors on the Turner Classic cruise, and they wanted movies. So I said, well, I guess you got to do Groundhog Day. You know, I mean, there was Mississippi Burning. You could do that one. You know, they're Uku, and they were saying, well, what is this movie Primary Instinct? We're interested in that. I said, well, that's a 1 take, 1 print of me doing stories. And David came up with a copy of the movie and got it to Turner, and the powers that be saw it, and they said, this is our favorite movie of all.
Wow.
And so it was very popular on the cruise, and the people loved it. And I saw it again after all these years, and I thought, oh my God, you know, that's what terror looks like. You know, the 1 take, 1 print. But it's great, and it's, if you could see it, it's really just live storytelling is all it is.
The thing that makes a story is not a sensational event or some absolutely hilarious thing that happened one time when you were a child or at the office. It's a journey that takes you from one place to another. And you are changed by that journey. And the important thing is the listener has to be changed too. That way, the story holds up a mirror to our lives. It's kind of eyes that we weren't born with.
Is all it is.
How does one see it, other than, if they get lucky on the next TCM cruise?
I think you could see if it's still on at Amazon, and right. I think it's $15 or something. I don't get it, but somebody gets it.
Well, it's a far cry from the birthday party, Stephen Tobolowsky's birthday party, which is $1.99. But again, another opportunity or showcase of your storytelling. It's fantastic. Wow. Well, again, David obviously has, gotten onto something. He had a film podcast as well, right?
Right.
Prior to.
Yes, he was doing film reviews, film podcast, and then he wanted to kind of branch out, and so he wanted me on as a movie guy talking about the movies, and then he saw this and thought, well, can you do some of your original stories? And that branched off into the Tobolowsky Files.
Sure, right. It makes much more sense to streamline it. Thing, yeah, amazing. So, and then amidst all this, also you're writing a book. So you have the most recent one, right? Came out also during the year. How long were you doing the podcast? Because I guess it must have been quite a while. You have about 100 episodes.
Yeah, we have 99 episodes, and I think we did it over 4 or 5 years, something like that. And
that's a lot of work.
I had done what was the trigger for the book?
Well, you returned right to your more let's say traditional Jewish.
Oh yeah,
roots.
That's for sure. That's for sure. And but I was trying to think when the first nibble of Simon and Schuster was. I think it was. I think it's. Oh, how did that happen? How did I meet those characters? Anyway, someone saw a show I did in New York. I know that for sure. Mm-hmm. And then I ended up being interviewed by Simon and Schuster, and they said, well, do you think you could do a series of stories like the one we saw on stage? And I go, well, sure, I could do that. And so that became the first book I did with them, which was Dangerous Animals Club. Mm-hmm. And so that was a series of stories with Simon and Schuster. And then they said, well, we like this very much. Can you do one that is more religiously oriented toward a Jewish audience? I mean, they said specifically, and I go, well, sure, I could do. And I ended up doing My Adventures with God, which I tried to break it up into the Old and New Testament of my life. And the stories that have a spiritual core of how that happened in my life and what kind of spirit and religion has meant to me in my life.
Well, what is a spiritual? How do you define a spiritual experience?
God, it's varied. It's like a peacock's tail. When you're a kid, it's like you're a big kid when you get to wear a suit and go to Sunday school, and you feel like a grown-up. And then you hear the Bible stories, and they're all pretty good stories from Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel, and. Sure. Yeah, I mean, they're all good, and you go like, well, this is kind of fun. I don't mind doing this. And then
a flood.
You get
wow.
you get a little bigger, and you end up going to synagogue, and you're old enough to go to services, and then you hear a sermon for the first time. And we had a rabbi at our synagogue, Rabbi Levi Olin in Dallas, who was a great storyteller, and he would pack them in for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
They ate cheese.
Everybody loved Rabbi Olin's sermons, and He was very dramatic, and
yeah,
and I got to experience that, and so then I decided when I got to be a little older and I was in college and doing theater, I got the offer to do a job at Temple Emmanuel and maybe be a drama teacher. Would I like being a drama teacher there? And I thought, well, that was great. And I met the guy who opened the curtains at the theater at Temple Emmanuel. And he was in Stanislavski's original Moscow Art Theater. This guy was like 90 years old. And so I was thrilled to go here and meet somebody who not only knew Stanislavski, but worked with Stanislavski when he was a young man. And he would always
who invented the method.
Yes, the books behind me, Stanislavski method. Sure. And so he said, in the Moscow Art Theater, the rule was before you go on stage, you shake the ladder. And I go, you do what? You shake the ladder. And I go, you shake the ladder? What does that mean? Does that mean you... No, we had a ladder backstage. It was connected to the wall. And you shake it, and then you go on stage. Yeah. I go, oh.
This is not a metaphor.
Not a metaphor. You shake the ladder, and you go on stage, and you're all revved up. And I was asking all sorts of questions about, did he meet Chekhov? And all of the... I mean, this was...
Oh, my God.
For a theater student, this was like crazy. Who in Dallas, Texas, runs into somebody who worked with Stanislavski at the Moscow Art Theater and shook the ladder?
30, 40 people tops.
30, 40 people tops. Yeah. So, that was something. When I was in college, I was more interested in writing because even when I was in drama, I had a problem at SMU in drama school because I had a teacher who hated me, who also became one of my stories.
Yes, that's my. I made my partner. Well, I maker. I made. Well, we always recommend these types of things to each other, so that was my recommendation that episode.
Yeah. Joan Potter hated me for some reason. I'm not sure why.
Still never figured it out. And yet you were able to, as like a mastermind, manipulate the entire situation to your advantage. It's an incredible story.
Yeah, it's a good story, and it shows, I guess, what my strengths were, and that was I knew, because I grew up in Oak Cliff where there were a lot of bullies. Now, you would think bullies are a negative thing in your life. That they're kids at the end of the street that want to shoot your cat or throw bricks at you and break your feet or something. The bad guys. But I knew from my childhood that you can't confront bullies. You can't do it. The only way you could beat a bully is go around the side way. If they're waiting for you in front of your house, just go out the back door. And eventually they'll get bored waiting for you and they'll go bully someone else. So I knew this woman, Joan Potter, from the beginning was a bully. And she was determined to destroy me when I guess it was something like my sophomore year, she gave me an unsatisfactory critique at SMU. And if you get 2 unsatisfactory critiques, you're kicked out of the school.
Right.
And so I'm like, my heart's pounding. I'm thinking like I did nothing really to, get her mad. And so now I had to deal with this bully at school. So I didn't get cast at SMU.
And a bully that has a lot of power over you.
A lot of power. And now with one unsatisfactory critique, she had ultimate power, and that one more, and I'm thrown out of school and I can't graduate. So
and what happens before you continue? Remember where you are. What happens in the junior year? You can take the theater like full. You can take basically major in theater, as like your
yes. You can.
So that is very important time to sail through your sophomore year, so you can transition and become
a theater major,
major at the school. Otherwise, you can't pursue theater in a immersive sense, right?
There were only certain classes you could take in the professional theater program. You had to be
right, the professional theater program.
The professional theater curriculum. Those were certain acting classes, certain theater classes. You could take those, but only if you were one of the selected. If you weren't, you could take classes like theater history, poetry, all this stuff. But you couldn't really do scene study. You couldn't do really the serious acting. And I wanted to be a serious actor. And with one unsatisfactory critique, I knew I was another unsatisfactory critique from getting thrown out of the department. Right. So I wasn't cast really in shows. So what I did is I pissed everyone off, and I started working at Theater 3, which was an equity theater in Dallas, and I ended up getting my equity card. So really made Joan very angry that I was going around, that I wasn't fit to have this. And so I knew at the beginning of my senior year there was going to be problems. And I asked my theater history teacher, Tony Graham White, if he had heard about the problems I was having with Joan Potter. And go, yes. I said, if I get two unsatisfactories, I'm not allowed to take the final exam for theater history, for theater at SMU, and I won't be allowed to graduate.
Normally you would be taking that in your senior year?
Yes, senior year. I said, is it possible I could take the test with you early? And the deal is you can't tell anybody. You cannot tell anybody that you're doing this, because this teacher, and Tony goes like, we know. So Tony Graham White gave me the graduate exam a year early at the back of his classroom one afternoon. And then without telling anybody, he comes in and says to me, you graduate, you got an A. And you got the extra, you did great on the test. So sure enough, it comes my senior year, and a month before graduation, Joan Potter gives me a second unsatisfactory critique out of the blue for no reason. Like she was just doing it to screw me over. And Bernard Hobgood, the head of the department, came and told me, I'm sorry, Stephen, you're not going to be able to graduate. And I said, why is that? He says, well, you have two unsatisfactory critiques, so you won't be able to graduate. I'm sorry. I said, well, I still don't understand why. He says, because you're not able to take the graduate exam. I said, Hob, I've already taken the graduate exam.
Right.
He said, you can't have taken it because we haven't given it yet. I said, I took it last year. Called Tony Graham White. He should have the test. So Tony Graham White came up, gave Hob a sealed envelope, opened it up, had the graded test in it. I made an A. Tony saluted me and walked out of Hob's class. And I graduated first in my class. Joan Potter was furious. But it was all because I knew what a bully was. Right. And I knew that. And I remember I did my first Broadway show. The Wake of Jamie Foster, and Joan Potter came to see that because I was in it, Pat Richardson was in it, and she came back to my...
to see you fail.
Yes!
Fall on your face.
She came back to my dressing room and said, you're still no good. And I said, yeah, and you just paid $125 to see me.
Unbelievable.
But
in addition to being able to identify bullies, you were also able to identify the heroes, these people that we have in our lives. Hopefully we can identify them. We have the luck to identify who they are, that with a simple gesture can somehow change your life.
Yes.
Have such an impact, right? To like for the rest of your life. And you had a few of those, which is like a through line through the podcast as well.
Yes, the heroes I had in my life. One of the great heroes I had, Lenora, was my maid, our maid in Oak Cliff. Oak Cliff was a white flight area at that time, which meant no black people were allowed to own a property, own a home there. They couldn't go to school.
Is this in Dallas you're talking about? I'm sorry.
Dallas. Oak Cliff, which is
your home that you grew up in.
Yeah, and that's in the south of Dallas. It was white flight. There was a certain area, part of Oak Cliff, where black people could live, but it was apartheid city. It was not good. I remember one story when I was like about 5, and I was walking to Jefferson Davis, which was the school I went to. And we had this boy who lived in our neighborhood, Mike Fernelli, who was Italian, and dark-complected. And kids were throwing rocks at him. And he's holding up a trash can lid to try to ward off the rocks. And he's crying. And they're yelling and calling him nigger. And he said, "I'm not a nigger, I'm Italian." And the boy with the rock said, "Doesn't matter, you're all we've got." And he threw the rock again. That was the kind of mentality of my neighborhood when I grew up. Mm-hmm. And Lenora was our maid. And I remember at this age, I went up to her and I said, "You're a nigger." And Lenora's eyes grew wide. And she got down at my level. And she said, "Stevie, never, never say that again. That's a terrible thing to say to someone. Never do it again." And at this point, I was in tears because I didn't want to hurt this person, which was the dearest person in my life next to my mother. My father was Lenora. And I said, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." As it turned out, Lenora was a very, very clever person. She ended up buying and selling properties in Dallas, became a millionaire. A millionaire, and came to our home with cash and said, "I want to buy your house." And my mother and father said, "Yes, you can." And she says, "But I want every stick of furniture in it. I always dreamed of owning the house that I worked in." And so I would go back to Dallas. My mother and father, as they got older, they left Oak Cliff and moved up by SMU, kind of where Dad was working, and the rest of the Tobolowskys are in North Dallas. But I would go down to South Dallas, to the home I grew up in, to the home where, was every,
some tenant, unhappy tenant.
Some tenant there at that block. And I would visit Lenora and her husband, James. And there I was going into the home, and there was all the stuff from my childhood. I'm going like, "Oh my God, there's the wallpaper. It's the same. And the rug is the same."
It was a museum.
It was like a museum. And I would sit there with Lenora and James and talk to them.
So they lived in there.
They lived in there. And they lived there. And I remember I was working on one show with Jamie Foxx. And Jamie goes, "Say that again." And I was saying, "Well," so I go, wait. He says, "Say that again." He says, "I hear Oak Cliff in the house." And I go, "Oak Cliff? You know Oak Cliff?" He says, "I lived in Oak Cliff." I said, "Jamie, you didn't live in Oak Cliff." He says, "I sure did." And he said, "What school did you go to?" And I said, "Well, I went to Kimball High." "Oh, you went to Kimball High School. Oh. I said, "What school did you go to?" He said, "I went to Sunset, which was the tough school on the other side of the tracks." I said, "Oh my gosh." So Jamie grew up in the same neighborhood I did. And of course, he probably was the most brilliant, most funny person in Oak Cliff. Quite.
Well, he certainly got an ear.
Amazing.
Right? Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
But that set me on a path. And so I knew heroes and villains from my childhood, and I knew great storytelling from Rabbi Olin, and I loved theatrical literature. I loved Shakespeare, and I just loved theater history more than anything, which may be why Tony Graham White was willing to help me at SMU, because everybody hated theater history. They hated taking that class.
Oh, I see. So he had a respect for you for that. Yeah. But he was, of course, yet another of your heroes.
Yeah.
Somebody who...
He stood up. He stood up to Joan Potter. That was a tough one to do back then, because she was the queen of the department. You know, she... But he was just an academic, you know. Right. They were scoffed upon, you know.
And you came the show, though. I just assume you reached the end of your storytelling library. It just made sense to sort of end it where you did.
Well, I guess life was taking a turn again. And I was I was working more as an actor, and it just, there was less and less free time that you really needed to put into writing.
Yeah.
So I was just happy to go on various projects, doing film and TV. I was just happy.
Mm-hmm. Well, it had a great impact on me, and I'm so glad I did discover it. And I urge people to check it out. All the episodes are available on whatever podcast app you choose to listen to. And you know, I haven't really touched upon specifics. I assume you've done lots of other podcasts and shows where people ask you questions about all your the films and the roles, and I, you know, decided I thought this was kind of, for me personally, you know, because that's how I feel like I connect to you through your storytelling, you know, as much as. However, having said all that, my 21-year-old son is coming up here. He goes to college in San Francisco at the moment, and he's in Brooklyn with friends, and he's coming up on the weekend, and he's going to spend a few days here with us. And this is a coincidence. For some reason, even though I love old films, I mean I can't even narrow it in. I mean, I love just any film that's great, you know what I mean, that I love. But for him, we've always kind of gone back to these 80s, 90s, I don't know, there's this era of films that for some reason I think he'll enjoy. Maybe that's why I introduced. So like the last time he was here, we watched Trains, Planes, and Automobiles, a film you certainly could have been in. But and then I said to him this time, I was just thinking, have you ever seen Groundhog's Day?
Oh my gosh.
Of course, coming up, and he hasn't. He hasn't seen it.
Oh, well, you'll have to let me know how he likes. I'm going up to Woodstock in a couple weeks where we shot Groundhog Day, and I am going to assist them pulling the groundhog out of the box to hear what the groundhog has to say.
Wait a minute, where are you? You're in Los Angeles, right?
I'm in Los Angeles.
You're making a trip for that?
Making a trip to Woodstock, Illinois, which is what?
Woodstock, Illinois.
Woodstock, Illinois, which is like.
Yeah, I didn't think it was.
A couple
it stood
hours
in for New England.
Oh well, yeah. I just finished shooting in Woodstock, New York. Okay. Woodstock, New York is where I also did summer stock theater at, which
Can I guess that that it was at what is become the Woodstock Playhouse? Maybe you did the Woodstock. Did you do it? Do you know what I'm talking about? That venue?
It was at a place that was called the Forestburg Summer Theater at the time. So if that became the Woodstock Playhouse, that's where I was. But it was proscenium theater.
Right.
It held about 200 people, and I did a season there. That I also did stories from the podcast about what happened there. That's where I invited Beth, my girlfriend, to join me up there, and I had all sorts of event. We had
I think I remember this. Yeah.
Oh,
go ahead.
We had a cook who tried to murder us all.
Yes, I remember that.
Yes, yeah, that was pretty good.
So I didn't remember that was in Woodstock though, but I do remember the story of I don't want to give away too many spoilers.
Yeah.
He poisoned the food.
Yeah, he poisoned the food to kill us all.
Right.
And anyway, why
are we laughing?
That's not the best part of the story. The best part of the story was doing the show while vomiting and
having to run backstage every few minutes.
Everyone's vomiting in a bucket doing Shakespeare. Doing Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And the audience is out there thinking like, this is totally
I've
normal.
been in the audience where I felt like throwing up.
This is like totally normal. This is the strangest production of Shakespeare I've ever seen, with puke all over the stage. This is amazing.
The reason is next door is this restaurant. I work with I'm a radio DJ actually. Well, that's my up here, in the Hudson Valley, and and it's a music station essentially, but so it's mostly music. And you interrupt and you do the weather, and you talk. You back sell the songs that just came on the air.
Yeah.
People just heard. People know they love this stuff, and there's such a musical history up here, as you probably know, with the band and Dylan and all these folks that are still like on the Mount Rushmore up here. But I also work with the Woodstock Film Festival, so I was interviewing Judd Hirsch. This is a couple of years ago in this restaurant, which they took over next door. And he mentioned he did Summer Stock next door, and what it became the Woodstock Playhouse. Then that's why I thought maybe you what was the name of the place?
Forestburg Summer Theater. Now, are you talking about the theater that's in downtown? What downtown? The main strip of Woodstock, New York.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the theater. That would have been big time for us.
Okay.
Being at that theater. No, we were in the woods. We were in the woods.
Right. Well, there is another one. I forget the name of it. Bird Cliff or something like that now, but it doesn't really matter. The thing I remember the story is how your buddy and you drove there and then he dumped you off. He said,
dumped me off. Jim McClure. Jim McClure dumped me off and went home and left me there without a car.
And these lunatics.
Lunatics.
Right. Well, yeah, these are all, again, I guess I listened to enough of them where I'm getting a lot of the references, so that's good. That makes me feel good. Anyway, if you're back in this area, I would love to hear, so I can come and see you live or, say hello or what have you, because, and, it's not like I'm from the city for many years and I just kind of decided to pack up during the pandemic and get out of Dodge and just wait it out and see how it goes. And then things kind of worked out real well up here. And I love it up here.
Oh, it's really so beautiful up there. It's just great. Yeah. I'm just hoping they call us. Corbin Burnson just shot a movie up there, and we were all staying in the neighborhood.
Okay.
Where you are now. We were down the road from the beautiful little theater that's the Woodstock Theater, and Martha Frankel, and she's one of the
Bearsville
writers.
Maybe.
That sounds right.
Okay.
And we were out. I was staying at the Woodstock Inn, which I was in a room. They have various rooms at the Woodstock Inn, and they put me in a room that was 6 feet 7 inches wide. Now I know this because I'm 6 feet 4 inches long.
Right.
And so the bed was at the end of the room. And so when I lay on the bed, I knew I had 1.5 inches, but from my head to one wall and from my feet to the other wall. So I figured it was about 6 foot 7 inches wide. And the shower was like a cigar tube. It's like, it's like some astronauts would want on a spaceship. I mean, it was so small, and I couldn't believe it. But
They probably had the shower because for many years, Stephen, they had the shower out back on the outside of the house, and this was the only way when the technology finally came about where they could actually put in these little tiny tubes,
It was, I didn't mean to bellyache, but I was saying to the producer of the movie, I said, here I am, the tallest person in this movie, and I'm in the smallest room here. And so she told Corbin, and Corbin and I had worked together a few times, and he thought I was complaining. And so they put me in like some mansion. And so for the second part of the movie, I was in this place where I had 2 stories. I would live a 2-story house I was living in with I had to go upstairs and downstairs. And it was like too much, but it was very beautiful. One of the prettiest places on earth.
It really is, and it's kind of magical. So I'm not going anywhere. But and New York State's a good state.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, so I'm going to introduce my son to Groundhog's Day.
Yes,
and then he can watch this, and then
I think I have a podcast on Groundhog Day too in the Tobolowsky Files. I have one.
Okay, I'm sure
on that with the behind the scenes kind of stories of what was going on when we were doing the movie, which were all kind of interesting.
Well, I'll incorporate it into this, and I'll edit out any other voice, put my own, anyway. I really appreciate it. Taking a chance. You didn't know me from Adam, I guess, and it was really
well. This is a real treat to talk about the stories,
right?
Instead of just movies or TV shows, because the stories are kind of where I live at, and that's kind of the dearest thing to me is the stories and how that came about and where you can
be your most authentic, I'm guessing, and and emotionally present.
It's the most risk and the most reward is writing. And so I was thrilled I had the opportunity to do a couple books for Simon & Schuster. I just loved it. And Dangerous Animals Club. And then Ben said, can you write stories that all have a spiritual bent, because the spirit seems important in your stories. And that became My Adventures with God, which is the second book, all true stories too.
Well, I'm definitely going to pick it up. Pick it up. Thank you, and I'm sorry to say goodbye, but all good things must come to an end.
All good things must come. Well, this was fantastic. Though it's a high point in my day. I have the gardener here. He's been here for hours. I wonder why. Maybe he's listening in.
Or I hope it's nothing like, there's some sort of disease
pipe broken or something awful. I don't know. Hopefully it'll all be good. I trust it'll be fine.
Well, I got to go shake the ladder.
Okay, so... you shake the ladder, and it's been a pleasure.
All right, I'll be in touch, and if you can remember, if you do come back to this area, maybe I could always, as a kind of a contributing programmer, I think they have me down as on the Woodstock Film Festival. By the way, it's in a qualifying festival, so the quality of the films in the last bunch of years, once they became a qualifying festival, has really gotten improved. Like the consistency or of quality. Mm-hmm. This last year we saw some amazing films. So if there's one that you're in,
I'll send it your way. And
you have.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
All righty. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.